gas stations? If not, how would you make changes?
I'm not sure I would make the changes based on the question that you asked. I would be looking at my state senators, my state representative. It is time to make sure that liquor licenses are no longer a property, but a license. And with that, we would have tremendous control. And for those of you who have a liquor license, I'm going to apologize in advance because I know that that is worth a lot of money. But at the end of the day, I think it works against our citizens.
Ms. Gibson?
So I know about this question because, and I'll tell you where it comes from. There are convenience stores and gas stations throughout, not just District 7, but throughout Albuquerque, who want to sell packaged liquor. So here's the problem. We have zoning laws here in Albuquerque that require a 500-foot distance between point of sale and the neighborhood, the residential area. The state does not. So the problem is that these folks who want to start selling packaged liquor, we're not talking about going into a restaurant and ordering a drink, packaged liquor from a gas station or a convenience store, cite the state law. So home rule would allow us, not only in the neighborhoods, but at the city level, which is really, really needed, to be able to enforce our own zoning.
Thank you. Mr. Biggs?
I agree that we need to be able to enforce our own zoning here in Albuquerque and make sure that there is some regulation of the distance between these liquor stores are and the neighborhoods. And I also agree with Councilor Arnold-Jones that I just lost my train of thought. That it needs to be a license and not a piece of property. On top of many other things, our licenses should never be something that can be owned. It seems ridiculous that it's a tradable property in New Mexico, and I think that is a root of a lot of problems here in town.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Gibson, what do you believe the city priorities should be for the 2014 state legislature?
We want our hold harmless payments back. I've already started lobbying. That was very unfortunate, however foreseeable. When we stopped taxing food, hold harmless payments became the norm from the state government to the municipalities, and we kind of all saw that coming, that eventually they would end. So we need to get that back. As your city councilor, I will be lobbying Santa Fe heavily for that.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Biggs?
I actually agree with Ms. Gibson. I think that needs to be one of our largest priorities, if not our largest priority for the state, is to bring back that hold harmless agreement and make sure that Albuquerque isn't bleeding out all of that money. I think that's where we should start. And there should be a lot of priorities for the legislature, but I think that's a good place to start.
Ms. Arnold-Jones?
What an interesting question. Since I was at the legislature when the tax was taken off of food and medicine and the hold harmless agreement was actually put in place, it was a bad idea then, it is still a bad idea, but to have our government say that we were not pulling our own weight and that we needed to lose this hold harmless was nothing less than insulting. The city of Albuquerque provides a major portion of gross receipts for the entire state of New Mexico. And quite frankly, there aren't that many things that I want to ask of the state other than we need help and probably an additional off-ramp off of a frontage road into the Windrock area. We need help on the Louisiana interchange. Beyond that, with all respect to our learned colleagues, we don't need your help so much.
Former District 7 Councilor Sally Maye had meetings here in this building for constituents, would you consider having similar meetings for your constituents if elected? And that will go to Ms. Gibson.
Absolutely, I talk about that at the door all the time. It's one of the most popular things that Councilor Maya did, or at least that's what I'm hearing. It was very popular, and so I would start with meetings, regular meetings, maybe every couple of months, and then kind of judge from there how often we would need to meet. So that's an easy question for me.
Mr. Biggs?
Absolutely, I would probably have a couple of meetings a month. In addition to that, I'm probably one of the easiest people on the planet to get a hold of. I have a business that I'm at often. You can literally walk in and talk to me there. It's a gym, so I'm there. I'm teaching classes, easy to get a hold of. I give people literature with my phone number on it, an email address that's easy to get a hold of me at as well. So in addition to meetings, on a one-to-one basis, I'm pretty easy to get a hold of, and I think just being as accessible as possible in general to everyone is a
Ms. Arnold-Jones?
Oh, shoot, absolutely. You know, when I was appointed in April, the very first thing that I did was schedule a meeting with the presidents of neighborhood associations. And I know that my colleagues sitting up here also already know, if you're at the door, that the best solutions come at the front door. And if we are going to actually make this area thrive, and I know we all want it to thrive, the best solutions will come from you. And so not only can we meet here, it used to be called the Hardin Heights meeting, and I believe it was held quarterly. I don't want to beat you to death, but we need your input. And, you know, come. But until then, my cell phone number is 379-0902, and it's attached to my body.
District 7, some of District 7 is adjacent to the fairgrounds, and the people in that area have had serious problems with noise, public health issues, flies, you name it, from the fairgrounds, and now we have the casino there. Recently, a young lady from Santa Fe died at an event at the fairgrounds. How can the neighbors improve their quality of life and work with the State Fair or the Expo New Mexico in a better manner? Mr. Biggs?
I think with most of these problems, communication is obviously key. We need to be talking to the people in the surrounding areas. But at the end of the day, it's the fairground that is responsible to the communities in the area. If we have problems with flies, with smell, with sound, we have sound ordinances. We need to be taking care of those flies and the smells as well. And we need to, the fairground's huge. We need to just organize it in a sensible manner to make sure that it has the lowest impact on the surrounding neighborhoods.
Ms. Arnold-Jones?
I'm not happy. I'm not happy that the venue of the State Fair has become almost a prison. I am not happy that there is almost no communication, and I want you to rest assured that one of my first trips was to the State Fairgrounds to meet with the management. I am not happy. This is a treasure for our area. It is actually essential for continuing the growth in the Uptown area and in District 7 because we need a venue for events to take place. And right now, that isn't happening. The noise goes unchecked. I get calls all the time, especially along Lomas, asking for abatement on the noise after 11 o'clock at night, and my calls go unanswered. And yet, we have the most important opportunity. You know, for the State Fair, people really love the animals. I do not understand why we are not talking about our State Fair in terms of where technology meets agriculture. It is a fascinating story.
Thank you. Ms. Gibson?
Well, I had the pleasure of walking those precincts along Lomas right after that party. And I live in Jerry Klein Park. So the event in question where that young girl died, it was very sad. But I heard that. I was up working. I heard it until after 1 o'clock in the morning. I'm a night owl, so it didn't wake me up. But the very following days, for about a week later, I was walking those precincts, and boy, did I get an earful. So this is what I've done, and what I will continue to do as city councilor. We need to have some changes with the commission. The commission only needs to meet once a year. They need to meet more than once a year, and they need to have representation from the city on that commission. They need to take public comment. I don't know if it was the last meeting they had in January, but a meeting not too long ago where they actually shut down public comment. This cannot happen.
Thank you, ma'am. Development in the Louisiana corridor between I-40 and Manal is booming, and surrounding neighborhoods are being impacted by traffic noise and crime. City is encouraging growth, they're encouraging jobs, they're looking for gross receipts. Do you have any ideas about how to create a compromise between the needs of businesses and the neighborhoods? And that will go to Ms. Arnold-Jones.
I'm not sure that there is so much a compromise. You know, we know that it is coming. We are looking for careers for our children. We like the accessibility. We like the amenities. And unfortunately, with the amenities will come some trade-off. So the challenge for us is, how are we going to manage that? And today I've asked to put together a traffic study because those amenities need to be as manageable and with as little disruption to our neighborhoods. While I love the Indian School corridor, it is time to look at a pedestrian crosswalk of some sort. I think it needs to be overhead and not on the street. It is dangerous. I want to make sure that the traffic flows in and around, but not through, and what I mean through, cut through our neighborhoods. I believe that if we all come together and work together, we're going to be able to achieve that.
Thank you. Ms. Gibson?
Well, I live very close by there. Jerry Klein Park is just south of Winrock, and I travel to Louisiana quite often, so I'm very familiar with this. In fact, I went over yesterday to look at the movie theater progress. There is more traffic. I can attest to that. I'm one of the neighbors there. However, you know, I will agree with Councilor Arnold-Jones that the development will go in that area. We need to do our best to plan for traffic problems. But I think the key thing is that the developers there need to be meeting with the neighborhood associations. There needs to be more communication back and forth there, and instead of just emails back and forth. We actually need to sit down and talk about this.
Mr. Biggs?
I agree as well. I don't think that that there's necessarily a compromise or a trade-off here. I think that it's developing. It's an area that's being developed. We have new businesses coming in there. We have people that are starting new jobs, finding new careers, and to a great extent, it is benefiting the neighborhoods. And yeah, there will be more traffic. There will be more crime unless we can get our police force back up to the numbers that it needs. But these are problems that come with bringing in jobs to a certain area. So I think it's not necessarily a compromise that needs to be reached. It just needs to be a fact of the area. The area will be a little more commercial. It might have a little bit more traffic. We need to do it in a sensible manner. But at the end of the day, we have more jobs there, and it's a pretty nice booming area.
Ms. Gibson, one problem neighborhoods deal with, there are absentee landlords in their rental properties. How would you address the problem of absentee landowners and rental properties that begin to cause problems for communities?
That is a problem, and it's a problem in my neighborhood and many of the neighborhoods I walk, and they stick out like sore thumbs. You can tell where the owner or manager is not present and not engaged. You know, part of the problem is that many of these places where there is an absentee out of compliance with zoning. So we need to enforce our zoning laws. However, that's difficult to do since there are only, I believe, 5 zoning enforcement officers for the entire city of Albuquerque. So what I would do is work very hard to start with to refill those positions at the city that have gone vacant for far too long and at the expense of providing delivery of quality services.
Mr. Biggs?
I think communication comes down, is one of the roots of this problem as well. I think, I spoke to a woman today that has been complaining to various places about problems in our area, including vacant houses. She's called 311, she's tried to get a hold of the council, she's called the mayor's office, and just hasn't heard anything from anyone. And so I think good communication is a good place to start with that. I would extend this a little further as well. I think there are some legislation that we could move forward with that would actually protect the people living in houses with landlords that aren't exactly engaged. I had a friend a while back that was living in a place that in the lease it stipulated you weren't allowed to post negative reviews of the property, which is obviously insane because you should be able to know whether or not you're renting from a crazy person. So I think in addition to vacant properties, there's some other things that we need to look at as far as landlords.
Mr. Arnold-Jones?
This is a problem that you can't wait for. We're attacking it on a daily basis. There is not far from here a Section 8 house that truly is a rental property and was out of compliance. And yes, I do things like drive by and take pictures, and then I call code enforcement. By using pictures, we have been able to get a much quicker response. But it isn't just rental properties. The bigger problem is foreclosed properties, and we have a lot of them. And when that happens, the owners are gone. That period between the owner losing the house and the bank taking over is like no man's land. And we have weeds growing up, houses are falling into disrepair, but we are actively going after every single one of those. But I've talked to the mayor about taking especially those foreclosed properties, working with the banks, and seeing if we can't use those foreclosed properties to provide the housing for the Heading Home program. And it appears that we may be able to do that.
Thank you. I'm going to combine a couple of questions here, and I'm going to give them 2 minutes. People who deal with the city find out that it's difficult to deal with one department and another department and another department because they apparently don't communicate well with one another. How would you try to improve the coordination in the city departments as a city councilor, understanding that the city administration should be controlling these departments to serve the constituents better and to utilize our money more effectively? I hope I stated that clearly. Mr. Biggs?
Well, I think that's one of the primary roles of a city councilor is to help people that are having these problems. That's our biggest role should be constituent services. We should be taking your phone calls and we should be directing you to the right department. And if that department isn't doing what it's supposed to be doing, it's our job to show up with you and make sure that department does what it's supposed to do. On top of that, I think cross-departmental training wouldn't be the worst idea. I think there's a lot of ways that you could tackle this. Just general, there may be city employees that don't actually understand all of the departments of the city, and so bridging that gap through just additional education for the city employees, I think would be a fantastic place to go.
Mr. Arnold-Jones?
Well, absolutely. One of the jobs of a city councilor is constituent services, and that is helping you navigate through the city, understanding how the city is structured so that you are asking the right question at the right place at the right time really helps. And that's what hands-on experience really brings. You're able to kind of cut through all of that clutter and get to the right person quickly. Now, I would be the first to tell you that communication is the Achilles heel of absolutely every organization. The city is no exception. But when you work at it and you do what, and I need to credit, we have a policy analyst, Tony Duran, in the back. This is the kind of stuff that we follow up on every day. These are your questions, your issues. When you can't get through, that is my job, and I am honored to work on that and to keep working on it until it is completely marked out or colored over because we want to solve their problems. But the job of the city councilor is to make sure that the city works for you. We are your advocate.
Ms. Gibson?
Well, that will be my job as well when I get elected as your city councilor. Helping people navigate problems, to get solutions to their problems. But I'd like to mention something here right now. We used to have a great 311 program, and it's deteriorated, it's decayed a little bit. And part of that is, again, the lack of staffing, good enough staffing. So I would work very hard and focus my efforts on rebuilding 311. Another thing that I've noticed, and I'll bet everybody in this audience has noticed the same thing. If you've ever gone to the city websites, many of the links are broken. Try to open up a document, it's gone, not authorized. These are very good indicators of a city that needs a lot of help. We cannot run a city on a skeleton crew, and that's what's happening. We're trying to run a city on a skeleton crew, and it's hurting us, it's hurting all of us. So I would welcome the opportunity to make those improvements.
Same type of question, only having to do with our state and our region. One of the questions earlier, when the candidates talked about issues with transportation, environmental issues with our neighbors in Rio Rancho, infrastructure issues with roads and so forth. How would you propose to improve coordination between the city of Albuquerque, Bernalillo County, the surrounding Indian pueblos, and our government reservations, Kirkland, Sandia, etc.? It's a multi-jurisdictional area, and it seems a lot of times we're talking to one another. Ms. Arnold-Jones.
Again, communication is already difficult. However, we have entities that are already having those discussions. Whether you like Mr. Cog or not, that is a major portion of its role, is to bring together those entities. And I forget all the acronyms, the RTMMD, which really deals with, for example, the rail runner and transportation issues, but it brings in DOT, it brings in the federal government, it brings in everybody. Is it as effective as we would like? I have recently been placed on those boards and my head is swimming. But do I think that you could help? I do. I do, because we need people to develop expertise in these areas, because it is so voluminous without one or two people saying, I'm going to take that on, so that we can be expert in that issue, so that we know whether or not it's a good choice for District 7, for Albuquerque, or for our state, and I ask for your help.
Ms. Gibson.
Well, I would also like to see more communication and cooperation within local governments, as well as the tribes. The MRCOG has been around for a very long time, and I have to tell you, I don't know how effective they are anymore. But that would be an opportunity that I would like to investigate and enhance, working with them, since we all, it's always easier to work with something that's in place, even if it's not working optimally, than it is to start something from the ground up again. So that's where I would put my efforts.
Mr. Biggs.
Like they pointed out, there are organizations that are actively working on trying to bridge these gaps and trying to increase the communication. Obviously, there's a lot of overlap with things like transportation from the federal, state, city, and surrounding areas for a city, and a lot of issues that transcend one government body into the next. I think I would take that one step further and say, if we're having communication issues, then it's up to an individual actually go to the place where we're failing to communicate, literally drive to Rio Rancho and sit at some of their city council meetings. We live in an age of communication. We can figure out multiple venues of ways to bridge the communication gaps that we have right now and actually get things accomplished.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Gibson, we've gotten quite a few questions in about infrastructure, street lines in Albuquerque, difficult to see in daylight, invisible at night or in the rain. Other infrastructure issues with decaying streets, curbs, gutters, etc. What can the city council actually do to improve this?
To improve infrastructure?
Infrastructure, decaying infrastructure, and so forth.
A lot. We can fix it. In fact, we should be fixing it. We have water delivery systems that are 60-plus years old. We have wastewater that are at least that old. These things need to be fixed. Streets, curbs, you name it, and that will put people back to work. So what I would do is, we have capital projects right now, ready to go, appropriated by city council. Somebody just needs to go get a shovel. So let's get those started. Let's also look for other capital projects, just like I mentioned, that we can organize. It will not raise our taxes. We use bond funding for them, and people will go to work right away.
Mr. Biggs?
I entirely agree with Ms. Gibson. That is exactly what the city council does. It's not what can the city council do about it. That's what the city council does. That is the primary function of the city council, is to make sure the infrastructure is up to our constituents' standards. Each city councilor also has a discretionary budget, so for small things like making sure the paint on the streets is updated, that's what that goes towards. We have small projects that we would work on specifically, and it's in a lot of cases up to you guys to let us know that something's going on. And then it's really not a stretch for the council to get out there and fix problems like visibility of lines of streets.
Ms. Arnold-Jones?
To be clear, issues of water and sewer no longer belong to the city. Much to my chagrin, you have a water authority that has bonding, taxing, and condemnation authority without direct redress of you. I think that's wrong. However, there's lots that we can do. So when you go to the polls, there is a bonding package. Vote for it, because renewing those bonds is what allows us to actually put in the infrastructure. The Municipal Development Department has a schedule for renewing our streets, but there has not been a call, except for one, and I'm not sure about Aztec at this moment. I have called anytime somebody has asked about our streets to have a repair, and it has been almost within the week. But there are bigger things to think about that we do need to plan for that are not in the bonding packages today. If Uptown and District 7 is going to thrive, we are going to have to upgrade the connectivity. We have got to get fiber optics in there. We have to make our capacity, which is on average 1.25 megs up and down. San Francisco is at 32 megs. If we're going to compete, we have to plan for it. It's expensive, and we're going to need that bonding.
Thank you. We're going to wrap this up in a couple of minutes here. A lot of these questions that we've had are starting to gel together because of the answers we've had. They've been fairly comprehensive. And quite frankly, I'm running out of questions. We had one gentleman ask, and I would like to ask this question: How do you differ philosophically from your opponent in this race? Mr. Biggs.
Thanks, Bruce. Yeah, that's a fantastic question. Obviously, myself and Ms. Gibson are of a different political party than, say, Ms. Arnold-Jones, so there are some key broader issues that we differ on, things like abortion, and that's just a personal, our personal take on certain issues. Other than that, we've all had our different experiences, and philosophically, I think that shaped all of us. Myself, I was deeply formed by my raising in Santa Fe and my joining the Marine Corps right after that. I grew up in probably the most liberal city in the world, and then I joined one of the most conservative organizations on the planet. And because of that, my take on the world, I think, is pretty broad in a lot of cases. I do tend to see both sides in an argument, and I like to think that I can reconcile them pretty well.
Ms. Arnold-Jones?
Oh, I think we don't differ as much as we are similar. But what does make me stand out, I hope, is my experience. Not only have I been a business owner twice, but I also have the experience of having been a contractor to San Diego National Labs, having that intimate knowledge about how it works, how it's funded, how it interacts with our area, I think is key to our growth. But no doubt, my travels around the world, not only with my husband, but with my father, gives me a very broad view. But most especially, my service in the legislature allowed me to make connections and to understand how our system of government works at every level in the state. And that makes it very easy for me to pick the right person when I make that call, so I'm not kind of chasing my tail to get an answer for you.
Ms. Gibson?
Well, I do have quite a bit of business background as well. 28 years at the labs. I write taxes for 10 years now for local families. Long-time volunteer. But that's not what I really want to tell you about. What makes me, I believe, stand out is my commitment to this race. I have been looking at this position for over a year and a half. It took me months to really consider everything that I could offer, everything that I could do for District 7 before I decided to run. When I made that decision last Thanksgiving, I spent the next 5 weeks looking for other people who were interested. Talked to Democrats, I talked to Republicans, and not one person stood up and said, I'll do it. So that's why I'm here. This is not about Diane Gibson, but this is about good representation for District 7.
Thank you, ma'am. We're going to go ahead and allow the candidates 2 minutes for closing statements, and then I would like to ask the candidates to stay, and the audience to stay for a few minutes, to meet with the candidates and ask your questions one-on-one, and tell them if you agree or disagree. We're going to start, and continuing the same order, Ms. Janice Arnold-Jones. 2 minutes, please, closing statements.
Super. First, I want to thank the leadership of District 7 Coalition for putting this forum together, and I most especially want to thank Steve Wentworth. You were an excellent moderator. Thank you so much. And I want to thank both of my opponents, Diane Gibson and Matt Biggs. You know, I know how hard it is to be a candidate, and anyone who is willing to stand for election has my utmost respect. I want to be your city councilor. I want to represent District 7. District 7 has so much potential. It's time to turn it into reality. We have the opportunity today to establish a vision and actually achieve it. Imagine making part once, do many things, a reality. And this was actually put into place almost 10 years ago when the Uptown Sector Development Plan was established. Let's get it done. You know, we can work on a transit system. We can do these things. We can improve all of our major corridors, whether it's San Pedro, whether it is Louisiana or Carlisle, all need our attention. And we can preserve our beautiful neighborhoods and our parks, which is unique to actually the whole city. You know, we can set District 7 on the path to a thriving community where our children and their children are going to say, I want to live in the heart of the Heights. That's District 7. We can do this. So I want to be your city councilor. I have the hands-on experience. I have the contacts that I acquired in the legislature to get the job done efficiently and effectively. That hands-on experience really made a difference. We can bring the technological savvy from the labs to make us soar, to make us attractive worldwide. So as I embarked on my public career in 2002, I never dreamed that this would be the best job. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Ms. Gibson, please.
Well, here is my intention. My intention is to win this race, and I will, but I've got a lot of work to do between now and October 8th. And I need everybody's votes, so I'm hoping that you will give me your consideration on the 8th. My intention is also to raise the bar for quality of representation in this district. That's what motivated me to first start considering this over a year and a half ago. So what that means is when you call, I'm going to answer the phone. If I can't answer the phone, I'm going to call you back, and you can measure that in hours and not days or never. I'm already going to the neighborhood association meetings. I will continue doing that, as many as I can physically get myself to. When you send an email or a letter, I'm going to answer that. I intend to literally set a new precedent for the type of representation that we should be expecting, and we should have had years ago and have not had. I have the time, the energy, and the background, my professional as well as my educational background, lends itself very well to serving you on the city council. So again, my name is Diane Gibson. I very much want your vote on October 8th.
Thank you, Ms. Gibson. Mr. Biggs.
I'd like to thank everybody for coming out tonight as well. And thank you very much, Steve, for doing this. You were amazing. And again, I'd also like to thank my opponents, Janice and Diane. They're great ladies, and I love interacting with them every time I come out to one of these forums, the neighborhood association meetings and whatnot. With me, what you get is somebody that understands broad diversity of subjects. Like I said, I grew up in Santa Fe, joined the Marines. I know what it's like to take care of friends, people underneath me, to keep people safe, and to make sure people get what they need. I understand what it's like to be in a leadership role. I understand what it's like to be a small business owner, to have to meet payroll, take care of your employees. I know what it's like to have to try to advertise yourself and get business, and what it's like to struggle every month in an economy that's flatlining right now. Albuquerque is in desperate need of a new direction right now. We haven't addressed our sprawl problems. We haven't addressed the fact that our transportation doesn't work very well, that our buses don't run on time. We haven't addressed the fact that our police department's grossly understaffed, that we're being investigated by the Department of Justice. I think there's some campaigns going right now that are saying Albuquerque's fine, Albuquerque's great, and I don't agree with that. And I come from a background that lets me see both sides of the argument and see the sensible path right through the middle. I think we can definitely make great progress in this district by taking two sides of an argument, reconciling them, and listening to the community, bringing everybody together, and actually getting this district more beautiful, with more jobs, and with reasonable housing, all within walkable areas. And so that's what I'll be working on as the next city councilor.
I want to thank all of the candidates. Thank you, sir, for attending tonight, the audience. And before I wrap this up, I'm going to hand it over to Bill Hope to close. I would be remiss if I didn't remind people to join the League of Women Voters of Central New Mexico. www.lwbcnm.org. In a couple of weeks, they'll have a voter's guide posted. And again, it's a wonderful resource. And if you haven't picked up the Who's Who political directory at the table, it's a great resource. Before Bill gets there, let's give these candidates a round of applause. Thank you, Mr. Hook.
something bothered me before I got there. I was looking for my phone. And I started trying to pull the sites and that's how my fish I was playing with my playlist on it. I did it too long and my eyes were